it in our language. That person did study on a book called Abu Shakar, meaning astronomy, on astronomy knowledge. You will not believe it, about the planets, everything. You know, this book, I'm now reviewing it to also translate it into English. I must tell you, you know what he did? When he tried to do the research, he had to spend 2 years in the British Library, because the manuscript in our language is in Britain. Taken. When did they take it? When they came to attack Emperor Theodosius, who was they used to call him my uncle. He committed suicide because the British came, and they took also his son, Lord Alamai. It's amazing. This is our reality. And the book is now done. And then I was so happy I got the book, and I'm reading it, and I was fascinated. The knowledge that was with us. So I just want to tell you that on mathematics, the binary logic mathematics, adding and subtracting, not multiplying and dividing, that mathematical logic, I have it in my PowerPoint, you can see it, but I just don't want to take. I want you to make sure that you tell me to stop. I don't want to take too much time because you don't have a lot of time. So the binary logic mathematics, the entire internet world that you now have, the mathematical system came from us, from Africa. But we don't know it. We don't teach it. I'm doing it. I'm trying my best with the students in South Africa. I'm making them more job creators, not just graduates. We have a technology for venture creation. And I make sure that they really team up also, not just be individualistic. And I have a wonderful brother here. He's doing the wonderful things about disabilities and all these things. You know really what he's doing. And he's still finishing his doctorate. Fascinating. At the same time, he's working. We need people like that. We need new approaches, new ways, and new understanding that the knowledge created from us is incredible. I just want to tell you that. So much to say, but let me just go. Africa is continuing to suffer from the colonial mistakes. We still, Mwalimu Nyerere said Tanzania is a colonial mistake. I now say Africa is a colonial mistake. I think we should correct it. Can we correct it?
Yes.
Will you be able to correct it or not? Please do. We shouldn't be calling Lusophone, Francophone, Anglophone, ethnic form, language form, religion form, gender form, and so on. Africa is not a form. Africa is philia. Africa is love. And we had a greatest philosopher who created the African Enlightenment 200 years before the European Enlightenment, Descartes, Kant, and Hegel. His name is Zariago, a great philosopher. He wrote a book called Hateta. I wish you could. It's translated. And a person who translated is Claude Sumner, is a professor, a philosopher from Canada. He came to Ethiopia. He learned the ancient language, Greece. He translated the book, and it's incredible, and we should read it. You know what he said? God is not religion. God is truth, he says. God is love. God is not religion. Don't use religion, to fight each other, to say this, my way of worshiping you is better than this. By doing that, you are hurting God. You're not helping God. With religion, you hurt God. With love and truth, as God, you love him. That's what he said. And he did say many other things. I can't go through all what he did, but just tell you that. So let's not fight each other by religion, language, ethnic divisions, and all these things that we still have. We should be like one family. We have a great philosophy here also produced in South Africa, Ubuntu. And we also created a new university now. And I'm a board member of the university, and I run the PhD program of that university. We do not call it a university in Africa. It's an African university. It's called Osiris University. And it's, I'd like you to all join. It's online now. It's registered at the moment in Lincoln, Nebraska, in the United States. I hope all of you can join us also. We continue the same, so many students now we have on this program. In fact, master's graduates already we have done. And this university created it is on the principle of Ubuntu. We don't want the teachers us to be paid. We want the students to be tuition free. We are doing it like that, so we want to graduate it with the principle of Ubuntu. That's what we are trying to do. So that's very good. So let's try to remove all these divisions we have. I don't want to take a long time. So to build with the cherished rich African value of Ubuntu, one in all in one. Let's go for the one humanity. I need to say this to you. All non-Western science are pre-scientific. This is Lee Swelpert. He came from here, from South Africa, went to Britain. He lives in Britain now. There could not have been any different, he claims in his book, Natural Nature of Science. Epistemological ethnocentrism he advocated. Greek seen as the cradle of Western science, which is not true. Eurocentrism predates the Greek origin of Western science. If science exploring, understanding, knowing human's nature in the universe, why start with Greece? We were the first ones. The emergence of humanity started from us. The emergence of modern science in the West owed major dates to many influences and innovations in Asia, Africa, and Arabia. Ancient Greek is not alone. It's not alone. Why? It is to do with willing Eurocentric myth that Greece was the only source of all science and knowledge. In fact, a Western scientist has written a book where he said, no, this is not true. Non-European cultures seen as primitive, white people seen as the obligation to rule the world, the white man's burden, they must provide cultural development to others, Westernize everyone, help them to become Western by encouraging, forcing them. Modernization defined the Western Westernization. Modernized became the Westernization or Europeanization. This is not good. So these are some of the books I think Andre Gunder Frank has written, a book. We should also get it, all right? And then all other books, you can look at it. There are other science, non-Western science, African science, Dogon science, Chinese science, Islamic science, Hindu science, non-Western science. There are many other origins of science. Martin Bernal is the one who sought Black Athena. He said, he is British, he said Black Athena. Greek did not start knowledge, it started from Africa. He actually did it very nicely. He described that very well. I like you to read the book Black Athena, by the book he wrote, very much so. And we have, still the culture is still not, we also have too many problems about that, that we have 2 cultures, 3 cultures on the science area, so it's too many things to do. So let me just go back. This one I think needs another very good time for all of you to read, but I don't want to take a long time. So let me go, yeah? Now, let me come to indigenous knowledge. We need to include indigenous knowledge in the education system. The concept of indigenous science is that it uses science process skills guided by community values and composed of traditional knowledge practiced in communities, serving as a foundation for indigenous science development even before modern tools and structures. Indigenous science has contributed to advance science and technology by providing knowledge about environmental resources and helping relate local knowledge to modern science. Indigenous science has also historically contributed to predicting weather in other areas. So, what is indigenous knowledge? Indigenous knowledge is very relevant. It's also called traditional local knowledge. It is a product of cultures, as she already, our sister, mentioned, but its traditions, values, beliefs, experience transmitted from generations. Not universities, the academy, though it needs universities, governments, and academics excellently code and develop IT. Very, very important in China. I have been to China and amazed what they are doing. A lady called Wu Yu, she got a Nobel Prize to treat, malaria. She did it. She never went to university. She didn't do it. Indigenous knowledge. My own aunt used to treat people. I grew up like that. I used to say, She used to go to the trees, get some plants, and cure a lot of people. And I say, Helen, what do you do? How do you treat, you do this? I go with her, she takes me there. She always says, stay here. She doesn't want to tell me which plants. I say, why don't I also know, because I want to see which plants. No, you will be the only one I'll tell you later. But now if I tell you, it's not good for you. Have intellectual property. You see, because me, a young boy, if I know this, I'll tell other people. So she will lose her rights to treat everyone, you see. I mean, so the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge is very a lot. So I think we have too much knowledge, the traditional knowledge, and I think a few examples of indigenous science. I think you can, on many things, as you mentioned, on irrigation, climate change, all these things, we can apply it in modern science. Indigenous medicine, obviously you know that. But I think the difference between indigenous knowledge is scientific knowledge also. We need to also do very good analysis. I think the program we have now, indigenous knowledge, may be getting some recognition, but still in the education system, we haven't included it very well as we. I know in South Africa you have done quite a number of centers and everything, but we still need to do more. Yeah, there are also many things with the indigenous knowledge we can do, the socialization, externalization, all this. The image of African has been built up on its lowest common Ivan Sertima. I mean, I think you should also read him. But Africa is the cradle of humanity, civilization, everything, as I mentioned to you already. The interesting thing is I can give you some mathematical things on the mathematics area. The various ways by total mathematics, ancient Egypt, Amosa, sonar geometry, African fractals, binary logic, in all these things, in metaphysics. In every sphere, the knowledge has been done in Africa. What knowledge has not been created? Even in physics, in chemistry, in engineering, in astronomy, physics, mechanics, the level screw, iron age, chemistry, Imhotep is, can I just tell you, is the genius of geniuses, the Einstein of Einsteins. But they say he's not African. Can you imagine? Because he's incredible what he has. He knew every field. I just mentioned to you. Everything was done. I've given a lecture on him, and you can also do it. I think we can do many of this knowledge about, you see, there's a lot. There's so many other knowledges also. There's been acknowledgement also by Carl Deaton, Carl Siegel of Cornell University, acknowledged on language, mathematical systems, agriculture, category, navigation, inland waterways, Nordic medicine, writing, all these fields, Africans have been inventors. So also on agriculture, there has been, and the binary logic mathematics, I told you, I mentioned to you, that we can do it also with mathematics. The first university in the world was African. Hagia Estevanos of Nigeria was founded, still exists with extraordinary manuscripts in all fields of knowledge, with the ancient scripts. Then there's also the Al-Quran universities and other universities. You can read my interview on Africa Magazine. I did a number of years ago on it. So there's a lot of knowledge we've created. I think, just to conclude, African origin science must be acknowledged as the foundation of Western science. Eurocentric science must be resisted. IK, SK, STEM, and the unity of knowledge must be promoted. From kindergarten to tertiary level, Africa, through the establishment of the African Union Economic Commission, must do the revamp and decolonize the whole education system. I have created the African Journal of Science, Technology, Innovation, Development. It's very good now. It's very well recognized. We must use it also in the education system. So Osiris University can start it also, being by example model. All humanity in one world community university is inclusive. IK should be developed, founded. And thank you very much. Okay. Sorry for taking time.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. Okay. Now we're coming to our next speaker, Mr. Bandile. Yes. Ufika nje. Thank you. Please let's give Prof a round of applause. You know, professors, we will expect this, Prof, because there's so much knowledge and there's so much that you want to share. And you are here as young people. We want to share a lot and want to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Prof, for actually laying the foundation for what I wanted to talk about. I'm also interested in African indigenous knowledge purely on the commercialization and product development side. That for me is actually a very interesting thing. One of the things I want to talk about, my background is in biochemistry. I went into biochemistry and then I sort of decided after spending about 2 years in the lab that pipetting is not what I'm going to be doing with my life. So I moved on towards the entrepreneurship side, and now if Allah is kind, we'll be finishing a PhD in science and innovation from Imperial College. But I actually put it there as Umdunje at Mambuzi. I guess Umdunje means just a person who works at Mambuzi. This is important for me because I think a lot of the time when we receive information, especially information from indigenous communities, we always get hung up with the fact that the person doesn't have a PhD, doesn't have this and this and this. We forget that this person lives in this economy and in this place and has better understanding than everyone. So yeah, I always introduce myself as Mundunje. Don't worry about the title. So my hair is gray, as you all know. She should be actually dealing with this youth thing because I haven't been youth in a while. But we'll talk about it because I work with a lot of young people. So one of the things I find, whenever you go around, you find people playing and lighting up in Beppo. It's always an interesting thing to do in a crowded space because it triggers a lot in people from how you're brought up. If you're brought up that African beliefs and African technologies and stuff are evil and of the devil, you will freak out when people light in Beppo. If you don't, you'll probably be relaxed. But for me, Beppo becomes that touch point. It's an issue, it's a traditional herb, it has medical use, it has psychological uses, but most of us have been programmed by some way to not engage with it because somehow the God who created Beppo is going to send us to hell for using it. It's a bit of a problem for me, I don't know about other people. So speaking of such thoughts around indigenous knowledge, there's a place in Cameroon that I went to, it's called Lake Jos, or Nyasa, I always get it wrong. The lake there, if you notice, there's an old abandoned western type village that's on the western side of the lake. The story there is the people there used to say, listen, you can't build next to the lake because once in a while evil spirits come out of the lake and they will grab you and drag you to the bottom. So as you know, most people, they're Western, they're learned, you can't do that. They built this amazing Western type village. One day there was a carbon monoxide gas immersion from the lake and half the population died. So the evil spirits came and dragged them to hell. So a lot of the time when we're dealing with indigenous knowledge, you need to be able to translate. One of the things I like to talk to students about is Craig was spoken about my children when he gives this interesting understanding of what malaria might look like to someone who's never ever read a textbook on malaria. It's a very interesting book. Read it, I won't tell you what he says. So this is from Manguzi. I came across Manguzi when I was a kid and I listened to something called Ugwanondo or something. This guy goes to Manguzi to find a witch doctor who strengthens him and things go bad and he has to chop people's body parts now. It's a terrible story. It's a cautionary tale. So I've always been fascinated with Manguzi until I went there as part of the UJ project to really talk to traditional healers, purely for me from the side of commercialization and IP. Because these people are producing medicines, they are using plants, they are using all of these things we're not documenting. So what happens is something strange, like this is a historical example. Who here is an anti-vaxxer? You can say it's okay, it's safe here. Cool. Who is an anti-vaxxer? Because vaccinations are a Western concept that colonialists use to steal something from Africans. Cool. The person who introduced vaccination was a slave from West Africa called Onesimus. He was a slave who was working with Jenner. And Jenner actually noticed that whenever people had these strange cuts that they had in their face, and they used medicine made from milk as well as animal fats and cut these lines. What he noticed was also, he linked this to maids that were milking cows, and he noticed that they never got these pox marks. So from there, by studying what he got from Onesimus and from his usage of science, the first vaccine was created to stop smallpox. People have been vaccinating for generations. It's not new. So for me, I tend to like having conversations with anti-vaxxers. Another thing about our IP, it's extremely dangerous. 400 years from, think about it, the first ships to come into Africa were in 1402, and the first movement of colonial powers into the interior of Africa was in the 1700s. For 200 years, there was malaria and all of these products that stopped them from moving from the coast. It took, young kids call them pygmies. It took this African person who actually taught these colonials that quinone will stop you from getting malaria. They used quinone and started colonization. Yeah, so in a way, I'm trying to say, sometimes when we don't gather our knowledge, it can be used against us. We have another controversy, Hoodia. Who's ever used Hoodia here? Ladies, have you ever used it? Did it work? It's an amazing plant.
It is.
Hoodia is a plant that was found by the Bushmen because they do persistent hunting. You go through long, long periods, because when you're hunting, you have, the biggest problem you have is hunger, because you need to be able to be patient in that. So Hoodia was used by these guys, and they used to take it, chew it, and it stops them from getting hungry. So someone came as a tourist, noticed this plant, went and patented it and developed products and sold them. And the community was involved in a 15-year court case, where eventually they won. Now 5% of every Hoodia product that you use gets paid into the community that got that. We have a similar thing. I'm going to move away from there, and then this is what the plant looks like. And a lot of the reasons why people come and do this is because we don't actually protect our IP. And protecting IP means the IP comes from the communities. How do the communities benefit from that IP? So there it's called, there's a saying at the bottom says, at the same time, I shouldn't feel too sorry for us because our ancestors told us that if this bag, which means the inheritance of a fool will always be spent by those who are wise. And we have, in many ways, been acting like fools as African when it comes to IP. It's harsh, but in a way, I will explain. This is the first good case. Rooibos, when you drink rooibos is a protected name. It can only come from the Western Cape of South Africa. So if you take the rooibos and grow it in China, it's whatever you call it, but it will never be rooibos. And the communities there benefit from that. So they're developing themselves and protecting their cultures. So the Manguzi project was started by Nkosi Amatembe, which is the chief of the Tembe people, who actually also met with Professor Simelane from UJ, and they were working on this special plant that they used to use there for treating diabetes. So from there, they actually documented it and validated the plant. Now it's patented, and the Manguzi community is developing. But when we went there, we actually realized that there's actually a lot of plants that are used for medicinal purposes. And the problem we have whenever you go, Prof. spoke about this, you go with someone today, like, okay, cool, what is this? No, I don't want you to know. You know, cool, you don't want to know. I can't document it, I can't link it to you, I can't link it to your community. I put it in my back pocket, and go and call it Mandela's special elixir for whatever. Sometimes our secrets get the better of us. So for us, we say, go to these people, we sit down. If you want to find me, most of the weekends I'll be at the Muti market, sitting and talking to people, asking what they do, what's this for, because it's important, and if you actually find something interesting, I need to know who told me this, where are they from, because then it becomes important for it. So how do we link this to youth? I'm old and probably too stuck in my thinking ways, and probably there are certain things that I will never learn. As my daughter, she says, like, I'll never learn. And it's okay, I'm not gonna learn it. But the young people are actually the ones with the energies, they're the ones who are the repositories, they're the ones who should be learning. They're the ones who have the ability to intersect with the world that's there. One of the things that I do, I run a company called Capri. Capri is simply based on what I was taught by my grandfather. My grandfather raised chickens. To supplement his chicken feed, he basically used to raise black soldier flies, sift them and feed the chickens. It lowered the cost of his feed. It managed him to actually take 5 of his grandchildren all the way to university. That company became Capri. It has, whenever I tell the story of the business that I run, I have to always say there's a man called Veli Lehlabantu who taught me this. Because that knowledge has to go back to the source, and we need to acknowledge in our young people, all those that are studying, it's important. Because if you spend enough time at university, you think all of science, all of knowledge comes from elsewhere, and you have no contribution to it. Which is not true, because science belongs to all cultures, belongs to all people, and every human being has had some contribution to it. So, from where I stand, African's knowledge systems are powerful foundations from textiles to knowledge to ways of treatment, ways of organizing society. Fractal geometry comes from fractal geometry becomes important when you actually want to design computer circuits to be more functional. So what they've done is actually try to mimic the fractal geography of these, because they are an effective way to navigate the space. Think of that as
Wow. 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 Isn't this is off? It's off.
oh, I turned it off.
Thank you very much. Isn't that very interesting? We are learning a lot from our indigenous practitioners, from everyone that is here. I'm going to be allowing our next speaker so that we can just have a few minutes of contributions. I know the time is very limited. Unfortunately, that's just how it is in this space. But let me quickly invite Utolokazi. Please come and grace us and with your knowledge. Thank you very much.
I think I'm very tall. Yeah. So I'm going to stand on the side.
Yes.
Good morning, Amagwini, Thokozani. Siyalibona lonke. Ndingutolo uhlangabandla umthenge. Ndingugawini uJabula Sijatu, ndingumbanjwa uGutsho. Basuke eManguzi bakubandile. That is important to me because I must explain that I'm showing up not as just this person standing in front of you, but an entire community of people and lineages. I'm an indigenous practitioner. Unfortunately, where I come from the Tamako tradition as a knowledge system. And we often joke that the Tamako traditional system is so diverse. It's got tribes that specialize in bioweapons. It's got tribes that specialize in governance and leadership, and a whole lot of other things. But because the system of indigenous knowledge are currently eroding and fragmenting. Often our knowledge system is poorly documented. It's unknown, and it becomes difficult to explain it because it still operates as a system and it's not fragmented. So I'm supposed to speak today on IKS as well-being economies. Because we focus on in the Tsamagu tradition, so my disclaimer is everything I'm saying, I'm going to engage particularly from the Tsamagu knowledge system. Because we engage all our knowledge in a connected way, so you can't define a female without a male, you can't define a parent without a child, you can't define a community without a family system. So everything for us feeds into the next thing. It's people, it's planet, it's sustainable futures. And sometimes when we engage our knowledge, it becomes difficult because we have to fragment it into silos so that somebody else can understand. And because that's difficult, we have found that it's poorly documented. And as a result, we are losing the knowledge. So I'm going to speak from a perspective of health because it's a burning issue at the moment. There's a lot of conversation. My apologies, I don't know how this thing works. How does it like press Okay. So I'm coming in to make a proposal. I think we all know what indigenous knowledge systems are, but I think it's important for us when we are listening to ourselves, remember, we're engaging a system. It's a system, it might be informal to us, but it's a whole complete system, even as we think it's informal. And therefore the opportunity when we talk about knowledge systems is how do we invest in them? How do we collaborate so that we get research that is translatable, not research that's going to sit at universities and we never actually get to bring it to market? How do we use digital infrastructure to support the growth of this knowledge system? And how do we codify indigeneity? Because for others it's a science, but to the people concerned it's just our way of living. As Bandile said, Umtuchi. And so the goal of this conversation, and I think ours collectively, is to think about how do we reposition it as a knowledge system, as Prof was saying, that can be commercial without violating people's rights, because at the foundation of all of this is the right of personhood, is the right of family systems, it's the right of land and oceans. And so when we talk about green economies and all these nice things that people are coming up with these days, we've got to really think about what is the practical implementation. My colleague Bandile spoke about the lake. It was a beautiful story. And I want to argue that the water always remembers. There's a story that in a community somewhere, people came and they saw the beauty of the land and decided to remove the people so they could build beautiful, what do they call it, ocean-facing property, prime property. And in so doing, it became a magical site. People were paying big monies to go and experience what communities were previously experiencing. And then one day something very interesting happened because they had to redesign the environment, push the water to a particular side. And one day the water remembered. And by that, it was a tsunami for the people who had built. But the water is designed to remember that it used to flow downstream or upstream. But sometimes in our science, because we think things are magical, we therefore tamper with that natural order of things instead of designing our solutions around nature's rhythm and science.
Come on.
And so well-being needs to be at the center of what we're talking about. So why is this conversation of well-being important at the moment? We're dealing with a lot of pressures, whether it's climate, whether it's food, whether it's health, whether it's mental health. When we think about infrastructure generally, we need to remember that there are people at the center of it. There's a planet that we must sustain, and there's a future that we must guarantee. And so every single thing that we are talking about that is a statistic is as a result of extractive behaviors that is GDP focused and looking at growth. And unfortunately, these interconnected challenges and pressures are saying to us we need to think differently about how we engage science, and I think globally people are beginning to do that. We need to build to produce well-being, and not just build because we're removing disease or it's another great idea that we learned somewhere else. So we need to be practical when we're thinking about these things. And I think in indigenous knowledge systems, right across, our focus is always around well-being. Globally at the moment, there's a move through organizations that we work with at IPROSA, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and the Wellbeing Alliance, to really challenge governments into thinking about well-being economies. And by this, to look at what are the social things we need to think about? What are the health things we need to think about practically now? So that this economy is not an economy that walks in, takes and leaves, but it's an economy that comes in, enables productivity, and everybody feels plugged in. To Prof's point earlier about young people, gender, all these different things that we have now found ourselves to be. But if we focus on well-being, then everybody's benefiting. And we are all coming together at different levels to produce something that is workable for everybody. And not just GDP as a measurement of growth. And therefore, in the context of health, we have to be thinking about more than just disease. To the point that was made by my colleague earlier around vaccinations. Vaccinations in the indigenous context are slightly different in that they obviously are formulated slightly differently, because you can't use the one vaccine the same way you would have used it on another person. So there's always a thinking around well-being when you do that. And so this is important, and it's something that we need to go back to so that we can lower the cost of care, so that we can increase productivity and school readiness, because this well-being that we're talking about when we talk language, when we talk education, is all within the knowledge system, but I think where it's failing us is that it's translated in ways that we are not able to relate. So indigeneity is at the core of knowledge systems. If I go to Mpumalanga, Bandile spoke about Mangusi. He says, you have to ask the person who they are, where they are from, because that informs how they engage you. And the knowledge system, and they are unpacking it. So it's very important to understand that when we show up in science or commerce, it's not just a product. We are actually showing up within our indigeneity, and that is an expression of the knowledge system, which when you are trying to codify, it becomes very important, therefore, to understand it to be a science that is slightly different from another area. So Mpumalanga will never necessarily be the same as Eswati, although we'll be having the same terminologies, but how we engage these things might differ. I'm going to try and, so basically, knowledge systems particularly in health, are very coherent, and they are not just about the clinical work. It's also not just about the product itself. Even in developing those products, there's a data science that you must engage that allows you to deliver the product, but also the therapy. And sometimes we find that in science or in research, people are interested in the products, but they are not interested in how we apply. So the actual health practice. So those things become important. So in the global order currently, the conversation is well-being economies. And we championed the well-being agenda in the G20 process. And how it's measured really is what are the capitals that are coming in? I see you. What are the capitals that are coming in, and what are they producing as an outcome? We've got to think about human beings. We've got to think about the social capital, the natural capital, and economic capital. And this is what's proposed globally in the well-being agenda. However, in Africa, we are saying that we also actually need a cultural capital. Because when we engage economy, even in well-being, our cultures then become an important factor. So in delivering health, we are not just delivering a clinical solution, we're delivering something that touches on all the SDGs in different ways, and something that is more inclusive. I'm going to skip a couple of things because I want us to get to the what should we be doing. There's a lot of work by the South African government in supporting indigenous knowledge systems. Unfortunately, there is a regulation that's mismatched sometimes. I think also there are biases because people don't understand. We need to engage in a very rigorous codification process. And that process needs to be laid on the foundation of indigeneity, to what Prof was saying, so that we don't just come and take the mathematical formulas and make them science in institutions, but it's important to make them rest upon the indigeneity of the people that produced that knowledge. And so we do need to think about how we categorize things, how we classify it like China did, because often it is said you go to India, you go to China, they're doing great things. But we forget that they did not have to design all of this outside of who they are. So you actually get to understand the indigeneity of Chinese people when you engage their sciences. And that's something that I think in what we are doing, we need to do. Okay. So we do need to codify so that we can produce solutions that are localized, solutions that are inclusive, that go beyond just being a doctor, a PhD candidate, and so on. And I won't go to all of this. I'm just going to give you this example. What is called capping. In my culture, we call it ukubula. And it's now a whole science in China. But in the Bondo region, for instance, it's one of our specializations that is now lost to us. The second one is acupuncture, which is called Buchoba. And it's a science that is used, and we used porcupine needles. But yet again, if you go to China, this is properly documented and researched. And okay. And so it's now a science that you can teach, and we can upskill and support practitioners. I won't be going further because I'm told we're out of time, but I'm happy to take any questions that we might have. But I think the basis of this presentation is to say that we need to think of knowledge systems as living systems and engage them from their worldview, so that scientifically we can develop solutions that are applicable to people and that are sustainable and build economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, let's clap hands for Ntolokazi. very powerful presentation. We will definitely share. We are just out of time because there's a next session that is coming in and we don't want to delay all the people. Please, let's do engage after this session. You can speak to our panelists, our presenters here. My name is Princess Nikki Wabam. The founder and the global president of African Indigenous Leaders. We are so excited that we've been given this opportunity to also present on IKS Economists. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry that you cannot take any comments, but please let's network and engage. There are also refreshments and there are also restrooms on the left, far left. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wish there was some discussion.
Yeah, but it's unfortunately it's always the case that yeah, let's do that outside.
This your laptop. I wanted the presentation.
Okay, can we get your details so that we can email them to you? Yes, because they have to host another session here. We always do quick things.